Good afternoon, and welcome to the Capital Funding Protection Committee meeting for October 3rd, 2024. And we're going to go ahead and get started with a roll call, please.
Paul Anderson,
Here.
Clara Andriola,
Present.
Elise Bunkowski,
Here.
Charlene Vibey,
Here.
Chris Cobb,
Here.
Andrew Diss, Jean Herman, Justin Ivory,
Here.
Miguel Martinez,
Here.
Devin Reese, Craig Wessner.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 2, presentation, discussion, information, and/or action. And the first one is public comment. Do we have any public comment? So I believe the public comment is for item 2.04. So we'll go ahead and let him have his public comment before we take action on item 2.04. Any other public comment?
No.
All right, thank you. On to 2.01, approval of minutes for August 1st, 2024, meeting of the Capital Funding Protection Committee. Do we have any changes that need to be made? Any questions, concerns about the agenda, or excuse me, the minutes from that meeting? Mr. Martinez?
Thanks so much, Chair. I just wanted to mention that I'll be abstaining from the vote since I was not here for that meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. If we don't have any changes or concerns, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 1st, 2024 meeting.
All right, thank you. We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And motion passes unanimously. Okay, 202. Presentation discussion on design phase funding for administration facility master planning in the amount of $2 million.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Adam Searcy, and see if this is working. You want to make that full screen if possible. Thank you. So this is a big first step that's been a long time coming, so I wanted to just do it a little bit of justice as far as telling the story about where we've come from, where we are today, and really where we hope to go with this first step. Talking again about administrative facilities. I found this nugget in the archives and I thought it was pretty cute, so I wanted to include how this originated even before there was a Washoe County School District proper, the Reno School District at the time, and how it began as a kindergarten building and why the moniker of a greenhouse stuck. Thought that was neat, and even how we got to where we are today. That the school district was consolidated in this building is just celebrated its 60th birthday. Long history of that found online in the entire district and all of our facilities on the land formerly known as the Reno High School football field. But in 1963, things looked a lot different for our district and our community, and this investment in our organization is a long time in coming. It's really where we are today. Since this building was originally constructed, it's been expanded and modified countless times. It's now about 75,000 total square feet on this property today. We've also converted 2 former schools into administrative facilities. The Brown Center, if any of you are familiar with it, that's the photo there, was a school for many years until the new Brown Elementary School was constructed. Also, Huffaker school there off of Virginia Street is now an administrative facility. And in about 2000, the school district acquired a large warehouse space that it's since converted in part to administrative offices as well as AACT High School. In addition to all that, we spend over $600,000 a year right now on leases for central office personnel, various reasons. That's obviously not something that's ideal long term and something that we're looking to remedy as we go forward. So over the years, many efforts to try to optimize and address our needs, small, medium, and large. Tiny little remodels to fairly substantial studies have been undertaken to try to improve the efficiency and address the needs of the ever-growing organization that helps support all of our schools and all of our students. But it's always taken an appropriate back seat to our investments in our schools. That historic underinvestment has, just every year that goes by become more and more acute, to the fact I wanted to be forthright that this was absolutely debated and intentionally omitted from the WC1 program back in 2015, 2016. It was, if I've got 25 cents, I want 24.5 cents of those dollars to go towards our schools. And that's really all part of the background. Since that time, as all of you know well, we've invested over $1 billion into 9 new schools since WC1 passed, hundreds of millions of dollars to expand and renovate existing schools and repair elements of those schools. We've also completed a comprehensive facility modernization study that specifically excluded admin facilities from it. We said this is going to modernize every single school in our district, and we're going to do that first before we even study our administrative facilities needs. Also, as you know, we've begun executing on that facility modernization plan. I belabor this point to really emphasize the logic and the actions related to our investments into our school facilities before we talk about making investments into our central office facilities. I also highlight this to illustrate the fact that the FMP, the Facility Modernization Plan from 2023, recommends upwards of a dozen or so schools to be consolidated or repurposed over that 15-year time period that the plan includes. So schools that you see on that little screenshot, such as Corbett, Dodson, and Smithridge, within the time frame of this administrative facilities master plan execution that you'll see on the future slides, are likely to be repurposed, and could they become an administrative facility or some other valuable purpose, as the Brown Center and the Huffaker Elementary School have in the past. These are just for consideration as I paint the picture of really where we are today. Also, I think relevant context is that this investment in our admin facilities has been discussed, presented publicly, and approved as a part of our 5-year CIP for several years in a row now. I wanted to at least, help reestablish that record that in 2022, 23, and 24, some programming for this investment was in our 5-year CIP, and the screenshot that you see below, of course, is from the current FY 25 to 29 5-year CIP. Year 1, that's really where we are today. In fact, I guess worth noting, some of you may recall, this was the one example when the board actually kicked a recommendation from capital funding back to the committee and suggested that you reconsider your recommendation, and we iterated and landed where we landed, which was the original recommendation that you guys forwarded to the board. So again, here we are today. And what we aspire to do with this recommended allocation is, of course, to hire a consultant to help us guide us through this process. I think it's important that not only we hire someone that has the professional expertise to do this and do it well, but also is arguably has an independent eye. Similar to the FMP, having someone come in who maybe is a little bit less encumbered by certain biases, who's, practiced at evaluating the technical components of this, but also at facilitating the discussion. That's really what we aspire to do with this allocation. But the scope of that engagement will, of course, include what's on the next several pages. Evaluate the true facility needs of the current and future central administrative team. This is an obvious but more broad task than you might imagine. There's over 350 full-time personnel that are basically associated with non-site based personnel, central administrative team. We want to plan for the future, and we also want to create an environment that improves the outcomes for those individuals, really improves the recruitment and retention, so to speak, and at all levels. We're talking warehouse, print shop, payroll, not just the superintendent. Everybody that works in this organization outside of our schools and in support of our schools, what do they need? In doing that, a big component of that will be who needs to be in what proximity to whom. Certain departments work more closely with other departments, and we don't have the ability today to have all of them in the same spaces that they need to be. So we think that there's an opportunity to actually improve the efficacy of this organization just by getting the right people in the right proximity to one another. Another dimension that is going to be an important part of what we develop through this master plan is how the Board of Trustees does their work for this organization and in partnership with our community. That's something that's long overdue, and I think most of you who do business inside of public boardrooms have an appreciation for the value of that public space and the significance of the work that takes place in those spaces, and we really want to try and uplift how that space serves our community for decades to come. We also really want to think about how this central office, and I'm pointing here because it's here now, but we'll see, exudes a relationship with the people it serves. So how does it welcome and encourage and exude a degree of support for site-based staff? How does it do that for parents and members of the public? How does it do that for students? Is there a space in this future building or buildings that are welcoming, that is a source of engagement to really demonstrate how this building serves the public and other agencies and the rest of the administrative team. So I kind of just wanted to highlight the breadth of this study, that it is more than just, hey, how many offices do you need and how cost effectively can we build that? We'll certainly be keeping cost effectiveness in mind, but this is our long desired opportunity to take this thorough of a look at it. And I, at the risk of overstating the magnitude of the opportunity, I really want to do this right with the community, for our partner agencies, for the organization, and come up with something that checks all of those boxes with and causes this to be a celebration for our community, something that demonstrates how we value public education in our community. In order to do that, there's a lot of possible outcomes. We talked about older school facilities, we talked about existing assets, and there are many other variables out there that we can and will consider. So we need to go through a structured process to help us land on a final solution before we can execute any design or property acquisition or things of that nature. In order to do this as thoroughly and properly as it truly warrants, it needs to be a more thoughtful and inclusive process, and hiring a professional to guide us through that is the first step. So that's all I have in support of the recommendation that you'll see in an upcoming item. Thank you.
First, I want to say, Adam, thank you for taking the time to kind of go backwards and go into the history of this. Obviously, things have changed over time, and I know that many of us didn't want to invest the money in this facility, but it seems that it's come to that point where we need to be looking at it. So I appreciate that. Any questions up to this point from the board? Yes, sir, Mr. Ivory.
Okay, I just want to, because I did some background on it. I didn't realize we was going to get such a extensive history to it, so I appreciate that, because it does kind of go in line with kind of what I found as well. The only real issue I have with this, Mr. Searcy, is this, what I'm going to call this creep of this building that continues to kind of leapfrog every year. That's the best way I would put it. So I think it's important to state that in the CIP in April of 2022, we had allotted $10 million to be spent in the fiscal year 26-27 for the first time on this property. We really talked about it for the first time, this facility, in 2023, in April 2023, and we talked about it because in the CIP for 2023, the first $10 million spent actually jumped up to the years 25, 26, with $125 million to be spent in 26, 27. Then we go April of this year. Actually, I should go back one. So when we talked about in 2023, in April 2023, we had discussed the 2025, 2026, I believe that was approved. And then the very next meeting, we had a couple trustees come in and introduce themselves to the committee. And it was asked by the Board of Trustees to fast track this just a little bit and push it instead of being in years 3 and 4 at that time, they wanted to push it to years 2 and 3. And we had a really good discussion amongst this group about that at that time. And we kind of gave them a heck no. I mean, we were pretty clear about, no, we're not going to fast track this one in front of schools that are older than this facility. We all understand the need for this new facility. There's no question that this facility needs to be built. The question really becomes now is, where do we put it in time frame of other schools? So with all that being said, now we're really back on a 2 and 3 year because now we're gonna, I guess we kind of split the $10 million now, and now we're gonna spend $2 million of it right away to do the study. And then the next year, we're going to spend $8 million for, I assume, going to be the initial design. Now, I don't necessarily have an issue with any of this, but here's where I'm going to draw a hard line, okay? I don't want this coming back and then we're going to be spending the $115 million next year, right? Because that is truly pushing it up in front of these other schools that we have that are earmarked to be done. I don't see us moving the other schools up, right, that we have on our list. I got them all highlighted here. Matthews Elementary, Palmer, Stead, Loader, Maxwell, Incline. I don't hear about any of those being pushed up 1 year faster, right? But I keep hearing about the administrative building keeps getting, and I get it. I get the fact we all want this new facility. It's going to make things a whole lot simpler. But I guess what I'm getting on is when it started, in the very first time it was brought to us, we had no money funded until what would have been 27, 28. The next time it was brought to us in 23, the money was going to get, the true money that we're talking about, the building construction money, was going to go to 26, 27. And now, where do we have the money coming at now? 26, we're gonna start design. Are we holding the 26, 27? Is that the actual construction timeframe? Is that how we see that? Or are we moving the? Did you? So we're actually got the building itself going in 27 to 30? Is that what you're saying?
So just to answer your question right now specifically, this is a estimated schedule as reflected in the CIP based on a project that has yet to be master planned, right? You know, the CIP generally reflects like the fiscal year of encumbrance, right? So what that suggests is that, as you described, we encumber the funds to develop the master plan in this fiscal year, encumber the funds to execute the design in FY26, encumber the funds to execute the construction in FY27, which will likely take more than one calendar year. So this is a more like, when is the work going to be completed depiction, and also to manage expectations that the completion of all of the facility master plan work, whether it's construction of a new building, the remodeling of an old elementary school, the acquisition of an existing commercial piece of property and renovation of it, is likely to take approximately through 2030. And again, that's an estimate based on a program of projects that has not even had a master plan executed against it. I hope that's helpful.
That is, no, that is. I guess, because to me, it feels like we're given an answer and then it's like, okay, well, we'll bring it back at the next meeting and we'll try again. It's kind of how it feels to me. Now, I get the fact that these meetings go by quickly, quarterly or whatever, and they go by fairly quickly for me. I'm just going to ask that we try to maintain this schedule and not creep that schedule way forward, because
I don't think I could go much faster if I wanted to.
okay, that and that makes me, to be honest with you, it actually sets me at ease a bit, because my concern with this, and I've stated it at every meeting we brought it up, my concern has been, we've got schools that are older than this facility. I got a tough time putting those schools behind this facility. So that's where my hard line is going to be. The only other question I had, which I think is just a simple question, is you mentioned that we currently, Washington County School District currently pays $600,000 a year in leases. Who pays that? Do we pay that, or does it come out of the general fund? Comes out of the
Combination of general funds and a few different grant or non-general fund streams, but not capital.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just remark on Member Ivory's encyclopedic recollection of, like, I genuinely want to acknowledge the accuracy of what he just described. That was legit, and in part why I wanted to highlight how this has proceeded. I would also at least add that over those, 3 CIPs that we are reflecting on the history of this project, the facility modernization plan and the full list of projects now known to be associated with it have also come into focus and significantly expanded. So I do feel like we are being true to the intentions that are schools first, but also, and why I emphasize the work that has been done. And now, we're here. We're not anyway. That was all accurate and pretty impressive homework.
Right, thank you. And I too want to thank you, Mr. Ivory, for being on this group here, and the questions you ask are always fantastic, so thank you. Any other questions? Member Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think obviously I've been around here a long time, and your memory is better than mine. I take a lot of notes, so I appreciate you kind of bringing us back through our timeline on this. I think that most of us, and certainly I agree, throughout this process we've been pretty firm in our belief that our responsibility to this community with WC1 was schools, and initially it was building schools, which we've done, and now it's shifting it to the modernization plan, which is needed with all our older schools. And I appreciate that this facility that we've kept putting it on the back burner, so to speak, even though we all know it obviously needs help. We need to run more efficiently, to address the limitations here is not anything I would argue with, but I appreciate, and I think, really looking at that priority. It's important, but it's not as important as our schools are. And I guess the only question I have is, since none of this was included in WC1, which I appreciate that also, because we kind of get hammered from the public about, when I was trying to help sell the WC1 to pass, that it was schools and that people are always, not administration, not hiring more administrators and spending more money on that end is a tough sell to the community, even though it's needed. I mean, operationally, you've got to have it. So I appreciate that WC1 did not include this. So with that said, where's the funding for this administrative facilities going to come from? Is it simply general fund? Is it going to be possibly, if we are closing some schools, the capital that we would receive from selling properties that we might not repurpose? Kind of an idea from a budget side, where is that income going to come from?
So, to be clear, this project is entirely eligible for WC1 funding to be applied to it. When I say that this wasn't included in the program of projects that were listed in 2016 explicitly, that doesn't necessarily, we have executed projects with WC1 funds that weren't included in that ballot measure. I'm just trying to be honest and genuine about the history of evolution here, that in 2016 when that ballot measure was developed, the committee that was mandated by the legislature to develop the ballot initiative said, we're not going to include specific funding for an admin facility. Now, nearly 8 years, literally 8 years into the future, we've achieved most of the projects that were listed on that program and are now developing future needs. That's totally within the ability or the legal ability for us to use those funds, and that's also where this conversation comes in. If the Capital Funding Protection Committee for whatever reason felt strongly that this was not warranted, that's why we're keeping these checks and balances. But just being honest, I think that even speaks to the same sentiments that are being expressed here tonight, that we're not going to go forward with the WC1 ballot that talks about admin facilities before schools. We're going to go ahead and pass it, do the schools, and continue to do the schools, and then maybe 8 to 10 years into the future, that WC1 money, which was passed without a sunset, could be used to improve other non-school facilities. It's school facility repair and construction. And we're doing both. Our capital improvement program includes $50 million a year in capital renewal. So all of our boilers and windows and carpets and parking lots are all going to continue to be maintained and replaced. We're also doing the FMP, $150 million to $200 million a year in school facility modernizations, and we're well on our way towards the first year of executing on those. And now we're just talking about master planning for an administrative facility. Again, just trying to be totally fair and honest about the balance that we're striking, that in my opinion, we're able to do all of these things at the same time.
So the funding for this will come from WC1 and general fund and other sources. I'm just trying to get, as I'm looking at a budget, where are we projecting the funding that'll be substantial? How will we fund it?
Our primary revenue streams are property tax and sales tax, WC1. This would be eligible for either or both. So depending on our finance department, if they they fund it out of one versus the other, but certainly not from the general fund.
All right, thank you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Cobb.
So in your presentation, I just want to be clear, you are going to look at all the outbuildings where, like Brown Center or these other places where we're renting, how much can we bring back together? Because you do, I know from where you guys are at, that is a lot of lost time transitioning from the Brown Center to here. I know we have Zoom and Teams and all that today, but there's such a lack of efficiency with how much is spread out. That's all going to be part of the planning study to see how can you most efficiently fit something together at one site, correct?
Absolutely, and is a more centralized, co-located model optimal for this regional organization, or do a more distributed satellite type of office environment actually more efficient for our organization? We'll ask all those questions and then some, you know. Does the school police department really need to be on the same parcel as the superintendent? Or, you know, I don't know. And then, you know, really what's the optimal, the most cost effective for the district and beneficial to the community?
Okay. And then one other. And we funded Ghetto most recently. Wasn't that funded through WC1?
That's right. On the last item, you'll see that ledger that we like to put up there.
Yeah.
We've historically put an asterisk next to projects that weren't explicitly included in the ballot measure. There's a few of those on there now, including the replacement of the ground shop over at the Ghetto Transportation Yard, which was funded with WC1 funds but wasn't explicitly included, and we try to be totally transparent about that.
All right. Well, I appreciate it and appreciate where Justin, let's stick on track so we are, like you've lined out, hey, we've got these schools to do. You've got this line up here. Let's stick to that and make sure we're really hitting those, following that plan, and then as far as the public, you can show that the revitalization of the schools is happening while you're looking at this, right?
Schools take priority.
Yep.
You know, if our revenue streams took a crazy turn and something needed to give, this would be the first thing to give. But we're ready to take the first step, and that's all that this is.
No other questions? Oh, Member Binkowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So more of a statement than anything. I think since this committee has come about, there's been a lot of needs for safety and security changes across our schools. And I think that's also something that we need to start looking at what we can upgrade in the facility modernization plan is any additions and enhancements to our safety and security at our current schools. As far as questions go, do we have an estimated estimate of the land value of this site?
I don't, off the top of my head. We have had appraisals done. They were pre-pandemic. It's about 7.5 acres. I wouldn't want to guess, but it's a very valuable piece of real estate. And we're going to be treating our local agency partners, including the University of Nevada, as important stakeholders in this process.
So if this site were to sell, would it go towards paying down the debt, or would it go back into our budget? Or does it go back to the general fund?
No, by law, any proceeds or sales of real property must be constrained to the building and sites fund. So basically it would go back into the capital fund.
Okay.
And could be used on other properties. It could be used to execute this project or whatnot.
Okay. And the savings from the leases cannot help service the debt payment for this building, correct?
No, those are general fund
Okay.
revenues or very program-specific grant funds.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had. Thank
If
you,
I
Mr.
could
Chair.
also mention relative to the university, about 2 years ago, we entered into an agreement with UNR to provide them a first right of refusal for this piece of property. So if we did choose to put it up on the open market, appraisals, et cetera, UNR would have the privilege of matching that offer first.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Mr. Ivory.
Adam, the only other thing I would ask is, in the budget you're asking for today, this is obviously basically the pre-planning of how we're gonna put all this together. Can you include in that as well the savings that that the district will incur on the general fund? Which would be basically the $600,000 a year, along with, I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of transportation costs that go down. Obviously, nothing we're gonna hold anybody to, but I'm just curious if we could, in that analysis, if we could get some sort of savings as to how much it's going to save the general fund throughout.
I would expect that the successful proposer would have the sophistication to not only include that in their sort of best value analysis, but also things like output, quality of output relative to the proper co-location, relative to the recruitment and retention value of having, more normal-sized, modern, windowed offices, which are hard to come by around here. So things like that add value, and of course things like what you described save costs. Ultimately, it allows our central office team, whether it's the superintendent or the warehouse driver, to provide better service to our schools and improve outcomes in our classrooms.
Well, and I think there's the added component that I don't think maybe we get to brag about enough through whether it's the modernization or just building the newer schools, how much more energy efficient they are, and the savings that goes along with that, because we don't have, we don't put single pane windows from floor to ceiling in anymore. So anyway, just all of that.
Yeah, I did do a little bragging to me and the trustees pretty much only at like 8 o'clock last Tuesday. I had a random information only presentation that was requested by the board on energy and efficiency. If you guys are really bored, you can take a look at it. I thought it was decent work, 5 views on YouTube or whatever. But it did highlight that fact. Like, our newest buildings are 50% more energy efficient than the ones that were built even 30 years ago. So just by improved standards, improved technologies, forget about the ground source heat pumps and solar panels that we're putting on Vaughn, for example. Every one of our schools that we replace or modernize saves, and that's general fund money. We started with a pie chart of our utility expenses that's knocking on the door of $20 million a year. So every time we replace the HVAC system through our capital improvement program, replace building controls through our capital improvement program, we're not only improving physical conditions within the learning environment, we're saving the general fund dollars. So I'm pretty excited about that, but we'll do the same, have the same effect here.
All right. Kind of just for me, I want to sum up. My hope is that, kind of like Member Cobb and Member Ivory talking about the efficiencies and how we can explain to the citizens of our community that if we do have a new administrative facility, how much it's benefiting our community. Yes, obviously employees are going to be happier and feel better about their surroundings and such in a new facility, things like that. But anything that we could have a quantitative number that we can put to it to show the efficiencies and the difference that it's making between what we have now and what we potentially could have. That's kind of the thought of what I wanted to see out of this. So. Okay, any other questions? Then with that, we'll move on to item 2.03, presentation discussion on design phase funding for the Edward C. Reed High School Facility Modernization Project in the amount of $350,000.
Thank you. And for the record, I'm Tammy Zimmerman. I'm the Chief Facilities Management Officer. Do you have the read one? It won't go. So this is the funding request for construction funding, our first one for Reed. We have been to you guys here in February, well, actually, I'll go back. In December of 2023, you guys saw the facility modernization plan. The board approved it, and so then we came to you guys in February of 2024 and asked for design phase funding. We're not letting any grass grow, and so we're here a little earlier this time for this item than we thought we would be. But in February 2024, we then got that funding, and then we hired Collaborative Design Studios to help us in April with our designs. They have lots of experience. We had done some additional pre-design and work at some other schools that are similar to Reed, so we chose them because we could hit the ground running a little bit quicker. May of 2024, we completed our conceptual design with them. Then in June of 2024, we hired Plenium Builders as our construction manager at risk through a competitive solicitation for them. So then we finished over the summer the schematic design. We've been working collaboratively with the school, with our architects, which is Collaborative Design and Plenium Builders, and we've come up, these are kind of schematics of what we've started to do. You can see on there that there's additional classroom space because we are going to demo some mobiles over there and remove those, which is a big priority for us. I say that specifically for member DIS. We're talking about approximately expansion of 70,000 square feet in classroom spaces. So we get them all under one room so we can create that culture. New band and orchestra spaces that are too small, we're going to be increasing those. They don't have a great weight room or athletic room, so we're going to be putting those in, but really meeting those educational specifications that we had approved for the new high schools. So what you see at the new Proctor Hug High School, we're taking that and comparing it to Reed to see what those deficiencies were, and we're coming up with these spaces. You'll see even outdoor spaces, new outdoor restrooms on those play fields so that we can have visitors and home teams kind of separated and allow them to have those type of facilities, which will be great. New ground storage because nobody ever has enough ground storage over there. Media centers, their locker rooms and their boys and girls team rooms and indoor locker rooms. We're going to take those and make them safer. We're going to take the lockers down so you can visually see over the top of them for safety improvement. We do look at all of those safety improvements with these modernizations. New CCTVs, a single point of entry, a lot of those electric door latch retractions with the badge will be included in that. That will all be part of what we do at these modernizations. So we have them in our new schools. We're going to bring them to these because it's equity and equality for these. We will look at finishes as we can afford them. We're going to be working up against a $70 million budget, right? So you may not see new floor in some areas and that. We'll be doing that with our capital renewal plan that we've continued to do all along. Right now, we're redoing the gym floors in the large and small gym, and we're redoing the HVAC systems. So those kind of building systems we'll still continue to do on their pace with our assessment management system and the timing of that. So really, we're here today to ask for a funding request for guaranteed maximum price number 1. There will only be 2 guaranteed maximum prices for this whole construction project. But the first one is for electric switchgear. And we have to get in line with manufacturing that a year in advance because they have to manufacture it specific to the needs of this building. And any natural disaster puts somebody else in front of you. So we have to have that early enough to make sure we have it in time for Plenium and the architects to get that implemented. So it is just the actual material, not the installation of it, that we're trying to get in line for. So funding request for GMP1 is for $350,000 for that specific item only. So next steps schedule, we'll go back to the board for GMP1 contract with Plenium Builders to get that actually in line. And then we'll be coming to you guys a little earlier than we thought in February of 2025 to ask for full funding construction because we'd like to hit the ground running in June. So we'll ask for full funding in February, bid it March to May, and award a contract to all of the subs through Plenium Builders in June. And then we'll begin construction. We have a great logistics plan with them. We're working with the school. We're actually also working with the staff over there to implement a STEM program so they can actually see what goes on in the site, not just, maybe through the planning stages as well, and so they can see what's going on. They have an engineering program. We've talked about even going into the art program to talk about the history of why the buildings look the way they do with that staff. So we're hoping to embrace them in the next couple weeks with that. So they'll learn more than they probably wanted to about their construction project. And then we could anticipate a completion in summer of 2027.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Cobb.
So in your interior improvements, are you going into the other classrooms as well?
So we are going into select classrooms that we actually are going to be using as hub spaces and creating those hub spaces. We'll be looking at what we can get into with any remaining budget. We have a really good estimate of what we can and can't do, and we're pricing those currently. But with that, all of those interior improvements into classrooms could fall into that capital renewal program. As we've done at Reed, we've done a whole section of hallways of classrooms with new carpet in the last couple of years. So they could see it with that, as well as we'll try to do what we can in here. We're going to be taking out the lockers, right, which will create some of those spaces interior that we'll have to do some work with. But we won't be touching every classroom.
Okay. And then the other one, I saw the field on there. We talked briefly on that. I know, 9 to 10 years ago, that was a huge effort that occurred, so we're going to hit it again.
We're going to hit it again. It is a big community asset out there and is very highly used by lacrosse, SYFL, or Pop Warner. They do have a Rotary club that uses it as well for track events and that. It is a huge asset for them. Reed does not have the same square footage in fields that a Proctor Hug or Spanish Springs or North Valley, so they don't have the practice fields to do a lot of their drills and that with. So we're going to invest in that field and work on some maintenance with that as well. And we have a joint use field that's up above, kind of next to Shadow Mountain, that is owned by the Washoe County School District, and we joint use with City of Sparks. And we're going to do some improvements, grading, drainage, some top dressing and seeding, and that to get that to be playable for them as well.
Member Dis.
Just a follow-up, so the main field, is that a living grass field or is that artificial turf?
The main field is living grass field right now.
So what's the upside to keeping it live grass rather than going to a synthetic surface?
We're currently working on a study to see what that is. We don't know what it's going to be, whether it's going to be artificial or live grass at this point.
So the new one could be.
So the new one could be,
Okay.
it's going to be a discussion depending on what comes out of our study, safety, maintenance. There's still the same level of maintenance from a turf field to a live grass field. You got to put rubber in it, you got to dress it to keep those tines from standing up. So we've got to look at that. Then we also want to look at water usage. They are on effluent water there, so we don't pay the same amount at Reed. And so that helps our treatment plant for treatment there too. So we have some considerations that we've got to look at.
Member Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Tammy, on the inside courtyard, and I'm looking at student hubs and group study rooms. In that courtyard, is there going to be not just a corridor, but will there be greater utilization of all that open space? I mean, do the kids just hang out there in between classes? What is utilization? Because that's a lot of space in the middle of this school. Are we rethinking how you can best utilize that?
We have with this. We are creating interior corridors to get them, so you don't have to walk across the courtyard out in the elements, so it'll connect them better. It also connect them better to the cafeteria and provide that outflow from the cafeteria into that hallway, into the hub space, and then, so the courtyard will be a little bit smaller on the exterior. So we're bringing it under the roof a little bit to add some of those spaces and connect them.
All right, any other questions on this item? All right, thank you, Tammy. And we're going to move on to item 2.04, presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve $2,350,000 to the 2024-2025 B Major Project Program for the Administrative Facility Master Planning Project and Edward C. Reed High School Facility Modernization Project, and to forward the recommendation to a possible future meeting of the Board of Trustees for approval, and this is an action item. Please go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. So this is our ledger sheet that you guys get to see. You get to see all of our projects that we've completed. You get to see how much we've actually spent on all of them. We're really happy about this. I think we're going to change the format a little bit next time to kind of take some of these off because they're older. So maybe we can just start highlighting the new ones and doing that for you guys. But it speaks for itself. We've done a lot since WC1 has been approved, and we're really proud of that. So today we're asking for that approval of 2024-2025 B major projects to the tune of $2.35 million.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Any questions? Go ahead, Member.
I will reiterate, I always like looking at this, even though it's small, going through all the numbers, is that the majority, other than Debbie Smith, of all the schools we built, but then all of this money we've spent has been on time. But most importantly to me, as a fiscal conservative, is under budget. So I'm going down this whole list, and everything came in under budget. So not an easy task, especially with inflation today. And maybe as we look at this administration building too, I don't know how you buffer that for inflation, the best you can, but just wanted to give everyone kudos for that because that's important.
Thank you. We're super proud of it. We'll keep it on page 2 so you can still see them.
Okay, any other questions from the members? All right, we do have one public comment. Let's go ahead and take a motion first, and before we go to vote, we'll go to public comment. So do we have a motion? Yes, sir.
I move that the Capital Funding Protection Committee approves $2,350,000 to the 24-25B Major Projects Program for the Administrative Facility Master Planning Project at Edward C. Reed High School Facility Modernization Project, and to forward the recommendation to a future meeting of the Board of Trustees for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Member Dis, a second by Member Andriola. And before we go to vote, we'll go to public comment. And do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have Pablo Nava Duran.
Morning. So I do support the reevaluation plan as it is because there's an older building that need to be upgraded to greater accuracy for the students to use that portable field, usable field, and a safe and dry learning environment compared to North Valley, Spanish Spring, and Hug High Schools. So they have not the Stratford, Spark, and Wooster High School yet. So gotta figure that out soon. So I do support the new Alvin building because that Alvin building is outdated, 1963. Since Tammy and Adam just showed the all 8x8 for all school, should be take care of it. So we know most majority of school could be consolidated. One could be new school, other could be repurposed. But I do support a new admin building, and that new admin building should be on the Smithfield Elementary School when Smithfield could be repurposed. I don't know how many years, maybe a couple of years. So here my note to take. So thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any more public comment?
No.
All right, I see it looks like we might have some students from the school district here. If you would like to make public comment, please feel free. We could just have you fill out a card at the end here. But would you guys like to make any comment?
I think we're good over here, but thank you so much.
All right. I gave you the opportunity.
Yes, you did. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, with that, we'll close public comment, and we'll move on to item 3.02, announcement of the next. Oh. That's right, that wasn't overall public comment, sorry, thank you. That's right. Thank you for getting me back on track here. So, here we are, we have the first and second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to 3.01, public comment. And do we have any public comment?
No.
All right, thank you. So now 3.02, announcement of the next meeting, which is December 5th, 2024. And,
Mr. Chairman, before we close,
pardon me?
just one thing before we close and finish the meeting.
Yes.
I'd like to give Mr. Searcy and Ms. Zimmerman some homework and request an agenda item for our next meeting. We had a lot of discussion to open this meeting today about WC1, and one of the poster childs for WC1 when it was passed in 2016 was all the portables. And you guys know how I harp on that. I'd love to see that they're being addressed at Reed. But what I would like to see at our next meeting from staff is an exhaustive list of how many portables we have in the district, the locations that they are located at, and I want to know what the lifespan of the portables are relative to the school sites when they were installed. So if we could get that information and get a little bit of an overview of that next meeting, I'd like to request that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. We've got it noted here. And with that, then, like I said, our next meeting will be December 5th, 2024. And without anything else, we'll go ahead and close. Thank you.